Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Yeah, I got a different background because I'm out of town. We're getting out the vote here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today on October 3rd. And this will be aired October 4th on Friday. As of tomorrow, the window for re-registering or registering to vote in the November election, it closes in South Carolina, for example. Everyone, we're urging you, please go to vote.org, check your voting status. Even if you've registered, you could have been purged. More than 1 million people, more than 1 million voters in Texas alone have been purged from the voter rolls, Attorney Anastasia Sinat. I mean, the plan is to shrink this progressive or Democratic voting pool, or even, I would say, even largely the American voting pool. Because remember, the original idea was never for all of us to vote.
Yeah.
So think about that. Attorney Anastasia Sinat, Haitian American Lawyers Association, president from Illinois. I'm so glad that you are with us today. Everyone, please go to Santita Jackson and Friends on Facebook. That's where I can become a friend. That's right. And the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. I know. I keep moving my times around my morning showers. I know you'll join us shortly. But let's get right to this. We're going to be talking in this first hour about Haiti and the Middle East. I promised you, as we talk about the Middle East, which is of tremendous consequence. And I don't think we need to choose. We have something going on in our own hemisphere. We've got a lot going on in our hemisphere. We've got Venezuela, an election that has been disputed, quite frankly, with interference from the West, from our government, quite frankly. And that is awful. But we also have something that's happening just off the coast of Florida, really. Haiti. Haiti. And so let's talk about that. We're on X. At Santita J and at Santita J Show. So please get on over there. But I want to talk about Haiti, and then we're going to talk about the Middle East, this escalation that is happening there. But Haiti's come up in the news once again because of Springfield, Ohio, and because of the accusation that the Haitians were eating the pets of those who are in Springfield, Ohio. And for their portion, as I've seen these man and woman on the street, man and woman on the street interviews, if you will, the good people of Springfield have said, we have no complaint about Haitians. We don't. They're good people. Do we know them? No. Do we understand all of their ways? No. But are they good people? Yes. But when you listen to them, they sound, this middle class, working class, white community sounds like this poor community in Chicago called Inglewood. Mm. They have had migrants, if you will, people who are legally here, put into their neighborhoods, and middle class resources are being stretched thin. It's very interesting. As I was listening to them, Attorney Anastasia Sinat, my soul roars, I didn't want to miss that part because the people who are not getting touched, this is not Beverly Hills. See, when I went to the store this weekend to get some things, I'm doing some things in my home. You saw Black and brown migrants lined up on the fence. They've even built a fence so that people can go and get day workers, as they used to do when my parents were children, and my parents are in their 80s now. And so that's what they're doing. The country was built on stolen land with unpaid labor and poorly paid labor, indentured servants. They were not paid. They had to work their way out of peonage. And then we racialized slavery. But you never quite gave the white working class their due either, right? So it's something for us to think about. But what's happening with Haiti? Why is it that Haiti continues to pay the price for being free? Because many of us, Attorney Anastasia Sinat, that's what we see. You know, you have enslaved people who overthrew their slave masters. And
Mhm.
France and the United States and the West have never ever gotten their foot off of their necks. But let's talk about Springfield right now. Oh yeah, let's talk about Springfield. What is going on? Because when you see a Haitian, you see a black person. That's it.
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
see. So I'm wondering what is the blowback on the black folks of Ohio, because I've told you this is caste trumps all class issues. Right? Just what you look like in the United States. So talk to me. What is going on with Springfield, and how has the Haitian community been treated, and what is your reaction to this?
Well, first, thank you for having me again this morning.
Of
Good
course.
morning to the morning stars, the Santita stars, I'd like to call them. Um, Honestly, I've spoken with people that live in Springfield, people who have lived in Springfield before. And the truth is, it's not just impacting the Haitian people that live there, it's actually impacting the entire community. Government buildings have had bomb threats. We've had other schools from preschool up that have had bomb threats. I think there has been more than 30 threats that have been, what do you call it, recorded, right? There's
Mhm.
incidents that have actually been recorded. We also have people that have unfortunately endured swatting. Swatting is where the police are contacted indicating that there's some kind of major event going on in a particular location. And basically, the police arrive in heavily SWAT like
And squat
attire.
clothes. All right.
Yeah. And so, in those situations, what they're doing is they're inspiring fear, not only in the people that work in the government buildings, in the schools, but also in people within their homes. So fear has definitely risen, not only within that community, but honestly throughout the state. When we think about the diaspora of Haitian people, you also think about the fear that has risen throughout the country. I'm not wholly familiar with people in Illinois having
Mhm.
that same experience. I think people in Illinois heard the truth, right? And know the truth. And so obviously, we don't eat cats, we don't eat dogs, and we don't eat pets unless it's curry goat. Then we'll get some curry goat.
Well, also this shows a remarkable amount of cultural disconnect and ignorance, if you will, because in different
Oh, for
parts
sure.
of the world, people eat different foods. Now,
Sure.
that is not what Haitians are doing. But I remember, and I've shared this with you before, I was on tour with Roberta Flack in Japan, and we had a promoter who was very, very generous. And he was very eager to expose those of us who had not been to Japan before to Japanese cuisine and culture. This cuisine is an expression of culture. And she told us, she said, now, just so that you know, a delicacy here is horse.
Oh, wow.
So you see your reaction?
No, I mean I've heard
Yeah.
of rabbits and squirrels and things like that being eaten here in the United States. So to hear about horse, that's like a big
Well,
wow
but
for me.
but you understand what I'm saying? That
Yeah,
and
sure.
that's the big wow. I mean, and that's been the rap on some other communities. Oh, we never see dogs or cats around their restaurants. I'm not going to go into all of that, but I'm saying there is all of that. I mean, while we have this unhealthy diet in the United States, um, that is shortening our lifespans. So
Hmm.
I just had to kind of put that out there, because I think it's all really very interesting, and the Trump Vance team continue to push it,
Hmm.
they continue to push it, and so I mean, and so what has been the impact of that?
Yeah, they brought it up in the vice presidential debate. I
Mhm.
honestly thought it was a little too chummy. I thought there should have really been more of a stick to the issues kind of debate. I felt that they did a lot of agreements on both sides. They did a lot of
Mhm.
concessions on both sides, but they didn't really move their candidates forward for those that are undecided. And I think this issue, when it comes to the Haitian migrants, could have been the main issue that Governor Waltz could have brought forward as the level of ignorance that exists on that side of
Mhm.
the aisle. Because if you're willing to talk about things that are untrue and you're willing to emphasize it nationally, globally, honestly, because now it's a global issue,
Mhm.
then you have an opportunity to highlight the fact that a person is not mentally fit to be where they are if they're willing to do misinformation and misleading news just to gain some kind of notoriety. So when we think about all the individuals that have experienced harm as a result of this, or those that may experience harm in the future, I understand that it's become challenging for them. But truthfully, cultural differences are something that we've always known about, right? Haitian food being the best in the world, obviously. Jamaicans would disagree, and the former Attorney General, who was from Bahamas, would disagree. But
And
we know that.
black folks from the
I
South,
mean, any Black crow from the
even though,
Caribbean would
interesting,
disagree. But the truth is, Haitian food is the best,
but we
right?
brought all this stuff over from Africa with us. And when we travel around the diaspora,
Sure.
we eat the same foods, but they might be spiced
Oh,
differently.
sure.
But,
Rice and peas from Jamaica is definitely different than the rice and beans
but,
that the Haitians make, only because of
but,
the seasoning.
but you are
But
going to have, rice, and you're going to have beans and peas
for sure, for sure.
wherever we are.
And that's one of the things that we talked about in the Haitian community. There are so many different international forces that have tried to keep Haiti down.
Hmm.
And one of the ways they have done that is through trade. And rice was the number one trade and export that was coming out of Haiti. And the United States did not want that competition. So what they did is they gave government assistance, welfare, to their rice farmers. And by giving them that kind of subsidy, they decreased the price of their own rice and therefore priced out the Haitian market because they basically wanted only the United States rice to be deployed throughout the world and used as trade. So when we think about how international influences, right, and these types of rhetoric and national language that has been used to describe Haitian people, to describe the culture, the cuisine, the people, it always seems to be negative. And you were right on. Why is it negative? Because we're Black. We're the only people literally in the entire history of the world that got our independence through slaves that defeated their colonizer. So when you think about that level of intimidation that was created back in 1790, I'm going to go all the way
Hmm.
back to the beginning
Hmm.
of the Haitian Revolution. 1790, the only thing that the colonizers were thinking is, can you imagine if this mentality that these Haitian people had went on to be in Brazil and Suriname or the United States or Jamaica or any of those other places in which they had slaves? They would all rise up. They might actually learn how to fight, use weapons, and then take us out. We can't have that. So we have to put as you said earlier, our foot on their neck in order to keep them from being able to rise up. But that's really what Haiti is being punished for over 200 years later. I mean, this is centuries of punishment based on the fact that we were led by someone who was smart enough to realize, look, let me go to the United States, help them win their independence in 1776. I'm going to bring some people from Savannah, Georgia. We're going to learn how to do the military way of winning, use their guns, get their acquisition, get their respect. Same with the French Revolution. Let's go there. Let's do some work. Let's get some knowledge, some skills, some abilities. But then they won't even know. We're going to use the knowledge, skills, and abilities and then give it to our own people. That's what happened to them. They were not prepared for the level of intelligence that came from these slaves, right? Because they were slaves from a variety of different countries and they collectively were able to create a language, Haitian Creole, that allowed them to communicate with each other and allowed other people not to understand what they said. So when they said coupe tête, bouye guy, which means cut their heads off, burn their houses down, that was the rally call of the revolution. That was the rally call of the people. So when we move forward into today's date, you saw that we had a rally here in Chicago. There was rallies in other locations throughout the country in order to say, hey, we are here. We may look like you, but we think differently. And one of the things we think is we have the right to vote, and our vote is a voice, and our vote is power. So, what we'd like people to do is to join our voice. You don't need to be Haitian to join the voice of the activist. You don't need to be Black just to support us. You can do what you can in order to make sure that things change. And that's what we're going to do, hopefully, in this upcoming election.
Attorney Anastasia Snot, president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association of Illinois. We're talking about Haiti before we pivot into what's happening in the Middle East. It just seems that people are rising up from everywhere um, because that's really the untold story of American slavery. Uh,
Hmm.
Attorney Anastasia Snot, how Black people were fighting back. This is, ironically enough, Nat Turner's birthday. Um, it's just we were not in the majority in the United States, so we had to launch this revolution, if you will, which is untold. The white part of the revolution is told, the Civil War, and that's extremely important. But it, Martha Washington, George Washington, the first president of the United States, who was a slave owner, uh, he deeded his slaves, his enslaved people, to his wife, and she said, "Please don't do that. These people have got to be resentful of us.
Hmm.
Free them, let them go." And he
Hmm.
said, "You can't manage this plantation by yourself." No, I can't do that. I can't. If I go before you do, I can't do that because they'd already had the case of Oni Judge, who was a mixed race Black. I mean, all this mixed race stuff is one drop here. Okay, she
Right.
was a Black woman.
That's actually the rule in the United
It's the
States.
rule, and quite frankly, it saved us because we were not allowed to bifurcate, trifurcate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, separate ourselves from one another. You know, at the end of the day, whether you were blue or white, we were on the same, we were in the same position. And that really has been the gift, quite frankly. It
Hmm.
really has been. We couldn't play those games with each other, although we did. At the end of the day, we had to come together because we were
Hmm.
fighting the same beast. But Only Judge, who was Mrs. Washington's personal slave, they would go to Philadelphia, which is where our original Philadelphia and New York were our original founding cities, our capital city.
Hmm.
And if you stayed in Philadelphia in Pennsylvania 6 months, you were free. So they would always let them stay 5 months and I guess 29 days and send them back to Virginia. When she found out what the she found out what the rules were early on and she started plotting. And one day she just ran away. She
Hmm.
said, "I am out of here. I'm not going back." And they pursued her for years and tried to trick her and have her come back to Mount Vernon. I'm just sharing that because she was triumphant. She died. Did she die poor? Sure, but she died free. So I guess she died rich. Everybody, how about that?
Right, right. If you think about it, right?
And so when you look at, that's when I see the Haitian people. That's what I see. I
Oh,
see
for sure.
people who are rich, 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 rich. The land is rich, but Americans and French and British forces, the West, still have their hands all over Haiti. Attorney Sanat,
I mean, you can just look at the difference between the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Why is
what
there
is the
so much
difference?
forestation in Dominican Republic and the land in Haiti is so dry and so mountainous? I mean, these are international forces that are discontinuing the aid that needs to be given to a country that they've taken so much from. I mean, the Eiffel Tower would not have been built had it not been for the slaves in Haiti. I mean, I don't know if it's general information, but
It's
it's
not.
definitely something. Well, it's definitely something that people in the Haitian community know. We know every time we go see the Eiffel Tower, it came from Haitians. So I think that when we're thinking of how do we advance as a community, particularly here in the United States, I think of the three things that need to be accomplished. Number one, I've talked about it before, but there's a Marshall Plan like endeavor that needs to occur. I do know that Hurricane um, Helene hit a number of different states.
Hmm.
But can you imagine the number of hurricanes that have currently hit Haiti and they have not been able to repair or recover from that? So part of the Marshall Plan was to rebuild Europe. So, in our estimation, we believe that the United States, as well as other countries, can assist with rebuilding, reforestation, giving infrastructure, rebuild, reform, restabilizing Haiti with the House Resolution 1241.
Hmm.
And I think that if that passes and whoever's in office as the executive signs it into law, then we'll be able to rebuild, reform, and restabilize Haiti. The next thing that I think is important is right now, a lot of people are under the impression that the people in Springfield, the Haitians that are in Springfield, are illegally present. Um, because of a variety of different types of laws, unfortunately, JD Vance mentioned one or two of those laws. A lot of them actually do have legal status. They have temporary protected status. Many of them are on parole. Many of them have, quite frankly, green cards already because they have asylee status. And then after asylee status, you can convert it to a green card. So when we're thinking about what is it that we would really need, and quite frankly, there is an act, a law that was signed in 1998. It's called the Haitian Immigrant Refugee Fairness Act, HARIFA. That just needs to be updated. If they were to update that HARIFA, that law, a lot more people from Haiti would be on a pathway to citizenship, and we would have less discussion about why is it that 11 million people live in the country, but there's over 2 million here in the United States. I mean, if people are afraid for their lives and they'd like to be in a safe place, that's what they do. They leave the location where they were and they come to a different location. I can honestly say if I was living in Haiti, there's no way I would go to Springfield, Ohio to live my life. It's cold. Why would I leave the tropical environment and family and friends and everything I've known to live in Springfield around a whole bunch of people that don't like me because of the color of my skin? When in the country that I'm born and bred and raised, everything from the garbage person to the president is a black person.
Hmm.
So when we think about changes that need to be made, one is the Marshall Plan, which would be the Louverture investment plan that was introduced in May of this year by our own Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, and then also Sheila Sherfulus McCormick, who is a Haitian Congresswoman out of Florida, and Yvette Clarke. They're both the co-chairs of the Haiti Caucus. And Yvette, as you know, she's our soror,
That's
and
right.
she's also Caribbean descendant
Hmm.
out of New York. So when you think about that, you want to do that first. Then the second thing is, like I said, the Haitian Immigrant Fairness Act being revised, right? So that's another word, revise. So we're talking about rebuilding, restabilizing, reforming, and revising a law that would allow them to be on a pathway to citizenship. And the third thing that I think is absolutely necessary is really to stop the deportation of the Haitians. One of the things that they brought forth in the vice presidential debate this past week was how would, if elected, former President Trump, as well as his vice presidential candidate, direct their efforts in deporting a number of what they called illegal aliens, right? The truth is, what are you sending the Haitians back to? There's civil unrest, there's political unrest, there's absolutely no stability, there's no security for those individuals. Why would you send them back to a country that's unstable at this point, particularly when you had a hand in creating the instability? I mean, they indicate that the mercenaries were the ones from Colombia that took on the objective of taking out the president of Haiti. But the truth is, there was United States hands involved.
And
There's some
some,
dirty hands involved.
they were directing the coup. They were directing the attack, the killing.
Sure.
I mean,
And
I mean, there are recordings.
I mean, if you look back at the history of Haiti and how many different times the United States has had their hand in Haiti, it's immeasurable. the amount of times that the United States has had their hand in Haiti, even as, I guess, less, well, no, I guess now it's a little bit more than 100 years ago. United States occupied Haiti for years and years, from 1914, 15 till about 1924, 1930. And what they did was they not only took over the country, but they took over their banks, they took over their money, they took over the entire economy. And again, further plunged Haiti into a situation that they're in right now, which is it's hard to do trade, it's hard to do business, right? As an independent country, nation, people, if people are constantly interfering and involving themselves where they should not be involved. And that's where we are. So when you think about the three different types of things that would truly help Haiti, you got to think about a Marshall Plan like endeavor, the Louverture investment plan that was already introduced to the United States. You got to think about revising the Haitian Immigration Refugee Fairness Act. And you got to think about stop deporting these Haitians, right? Leave them alone. Let them live their lives. They left their country. They don't want to be in that hostility. They don't want to be in that civil unrest. Just stop deporting them. That way they can grow their families the way that they need to be grown right here in the United States. Even though they're not technically interfering with United States business right now,
Hmm.
in 5 years, 6 years, maybe 7 years. They can be super productive citizens of the United States. They'll be able to vote. They'll be able to do all the different things that other United States citizens can do with naturalization. And unfortunately, I did hear about Project 2025.
Hmm.
One of the things they would like to do is to denaturalize people like my mom and dad, right? People who were not born in this country, they just like to denaturalize them. No
But not Melania.
reason, right? No reason to denaturalize them, but they just want to
No,
get rid of them.
let's just let's put it where it is. As we pivot to Phyllis Venice and talk about Middle East, and you're free to stay because it's the
Mhm.
same colonial project, quite frankly.
Mhm.
And we have to recognize it for what it is. Haiti is not unstable; it's being destabilized, and it's being
Sure.
destabilized by forces who the Western forces, France, the United States, and we
Spain,
and it just needs to.
United Kingdom, all
And
of
the
them want
UK,
their hands in
they,
Haiti.
because it's rich soil, and
Yes,
and this is
oil. They got
colonial.
oil
Well, my
reserves.
father, well, my father said, slave masters never retire, and so you must retire them.
Hmm.
And so that's why, I promised you that as we talk about all of these international conflicts, and they are of tremendous consequence, we need to continue to look at Haiti and get involved in Haiti because Haiti is us. It's all of us. It's every American, any human being who wants freedom, who wants liberty. This is your struggle, red, yellow, black, brown, and white. We're all precious in God's sight, and we are all in this struggle together. So, everybody, please let us. What is the number of that bill so we can call our congresspersons and let them know?
House Resolution 1241.
Okay, see right there.
1241. That's
I want.
definitely what needs to be called upon. In fact, we met with the Congressional Black Caucus. I think it
Okay.
was last week we met with them. They gave us an audience. We were able to revitalize that. They also had another one, House Resolution 1509. That specifically was to stop Haitian hate. And
Mhm.
that was to let people know that if you were to do something negative, that you would be prosecuted to the
Mhm.
fullest extent of the law based on that, what would be considered a hate crime. So we've got some people that are in Congress that are on our side, but we're certainly going to need more people who have been voted into office that are able to make these laws get into office, quite frankly, so that it can happen. We just need that support. And it doesn't need to, like I said, you don't need to be Haitian. You can be black, white, Asian, Arab, whatever it is. As long as you support human beings, you should be supporting these things.
Attorney Anastasia Sinat, my dear soror, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant woman. That's what a Delta girl looks like, everybody.
Thank you.
Love you, girl.
Love you too.
My girl, my girl. And I had to bring on Phyllis Bennett because you sing all of our sorority talk from college, but I am her big sister because I am 1,000 years older than
Yes, it's about that
Attorney
business.
Sinai. It's about that. It's about that. But I'm very, very excited. Indeed, this is the director of the new internationalism project at Institute for Policy Studies. And whenever we're talking about the Middle East, Reverend Jesse Jackson has always pivoted to Phyllis Bennis. Brilliant, brilliant writer. And may I wish you a happy new year. All of my Jewish brothers and sisters, Rosh Hashanah. And the holy season for you is right now. And I am in this moment, we are all in mourning because um, there is so much unrest. And, maybe this is my unrest hour as we opened up talking about Haiti, but now we're talking about the Middle East and the escalation that we're seeing. They're calling this, um, we're saying that Hezbollah and Israel are at war. It's not, I don't know. I have a hard time calling it a war because that's two opposing armies, Phyllis Venice. But what's frightening to me is it's almost a given that we might be looking at nuclear war. I mean, no one seems to even be bothered by that. So,
Yeah.
Phyllis Venice, help us to understand where we are because every day the news gets more and more dire. It gets worse, and the conflict is building.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, Santita. I'm really glad to be with you both this morning. It is getting worse, and it's very, very dangerous and becoming more dangerous. We are on an upward trajectory towards greater war. Your concern about what constitutes a war when there's not two competing armies is absolutely right and fading because the prospect of a full-scale back and forth between Israel and Iran is exactly two major armies. This is not even Hezbollah, which is a powerful militia force, or Hamas, which is a tiny militant force. This is a serious military that has now been attacked. And one of the things we're looking at, there was a question, the first question posed in the vice presidential debate the other night was essentially, should there be a preemptive strike on Iran? Should Israel launch a preemptive strike? And the implication was, should the US participate in that? And it was like, what kind of a calendar are you looking at? Because the preemptive strike happened a long time ago. Israel has been carrying out assassinations across Iran, mainly of nuclear scientists. Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, but it does have a nuclear power program, which ironically was begun under US urging many, many years ago and has continued. It has been assassinating Iranian leaders, and it has been assassinating allies of Iran throughout the region just in this last year at a much greater rate. So the notion that anything right now is preemptive is certainly not the case. Even the New York Times this morning finally acknowledged that the Iranian strikes the other night on Tuesday, which luckily did not kill any Israelis, did tragically kill one Palestinian man in the occupied West Bank in Jericho. But despite there being a lot of missiles fired, no one inside Israel was killed. And yet, it took them until today to admit that the Iranian action was in retaliation, that it didn't just happen out of the blue, so that now Israel has to decide what to do in response. Israel has set the terms for this. And in just these last 3 weeks, Santita, in Lebanon, there have been 1,400 people killed by Israeli airstrikes and now by the ground invasion in southern Lebanon, getting closer every day to Beirut. And this is after the attack 3 weeks ago that launched this escalation in Lebanon that involved first, I think listeners will remember, the attack of the pagers, where thousands of pagers were programmed to explode at the same time across the country. Israel has extraordinarily talented high-tech capabilities on all this. The next day, it was walkie-talkies. And in both of those instances, hundreds of people were killed, thousands that first day with the pagers, thousands of people were injured seriously because the pagers were programmed to buzz so that someone would pick it up and look at it to see what was going on and then it would explode. So people lost eyes, they lost fingers and hands, and children were killed picking them up. So it was a horrific moment. And the next day we saw the same thing with walkie-talkies, which both of those are specifically prohibited in international law. They're booby traps. They're designed to look like normal civilian items. In this case, a pager. Doctors use the pagers. Many of the people who were injured and killed were healthcare workers, and walkie-talkies. And the aim, Israel says, was to kill Hezbollah militants, which it did some of that, but it also killed people who are connected to the Hezbollah political party, the largest political party in Lebanon, whether Israel wants to choose that or not. It's not their call, but it is the largest political party in Lebanon. And there are numbers of people who are healthcare workers and teachers and mechanics and all kinds of people who have some connection to Hezbollah, but are not militants, are not attacking anybody. So these were civilians largely who were killed. There were some militants, but largely civilians. And then there was a ground invasion going on right now in Lebanon. So the escalation, and this is after the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas, who was the chief negotiator with Israel over a ceasefire. Now, if you want to say that you're serious about a ceasefire and one of your first acts is to go and assassinate your counterpart, that really says something about how serious you are or are not about a ceasefire. What we still need is a ceasefire in Gaza. And we need the definition of ceasefire that this graphic, huge movement has been created across the United States calling for a ceasefire now, who have come to understand that that doesn't just mean stop bombing for a moment. It means stop bombing and stop the tank attacks and stop the drone attacks. But it also means get in a massive amount of humanitarian assistance, which is so desperately needed. People are starving. Children are dying of starvation in Gaza now, and medical care, which is completely unavailable. And third, stop sending the weapons. That's the role of the US. When we talk about what role the US should be playing, that's what the US needs to do, to make sure that a ceasefire can actually happen. Because right now, all the good words we're hearing, whether it's from President Biden or Vice President Kamala Harris, from members of Congress, from anyone else saying, please, we need a ceasefire, means nothing when we are sending on a daily basis billions, literally billions. It's been $12.5 billion so far this year of weapons directly to the Israeli military to make sure that this assault continues. That's where we are today.
Well, I need to know, what do these agreements mean? It has been reported that Hassan Nasrallah, who was just killed, someone who is in the direct line in terms of his lineage to the Prophet Muhammad, which is very unsettling, that he was negotiating a ceasefire. He said, if you stop killing the Palestinians, we are done and we will be at peace. Not a problem. And then you have Secretary of State Blinken. The wheels are in motion for the aid to get to the Palestinians. And we found that, okay, they're not getting there because Israeli citizens, IDF, everybody's blocking it. And he's not telling the truth about that. He's our Secretary of State.
That's right. There was a very specific lie told by a number of people, but led by Secretary of State Blinken, which had to do exactly with this question of whether Israeli military forces were blocking aid. All of the key humanitarian operations working on the ground from the United Nations, Oxfam, I believe Save the Children is still in there. Many of them have been driven out because they can't protect their healthcare workers. But there are still groups working on the ground. They have all said that the Israeli military is the main problem in getting the tiny amount of aid that might get in from being distributed, that they can't do it. The Israeli troops are preventing them. The two key components of the State Department, USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, and the State Department's own Refugee Department, both issued statements in April, not statements, but in-depth reports saying very clearly that it was the Israeli military that was the problem in making sure that humanitarian assistance was not reaching starving people, starving children in Gaza. And in response to that, the State Department political echelon, led by Secretary of State Blinken, issued his own report in May, just 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, saying, we have not seen evidence that Israel is responsible, and therefore sending weapons can continue. Because US law, Santita, we're not talking here about international law. US law says very explicitly, if any country is preventing the access of US assistance, and some of this assistance is coming from the US, if they are preventing US humanitarian assistance from getting to the people it's supposed to get to, they cannot receive US military support. In order to support Israel militarily, Secretary of State Blinken lied and said, we are not seeing that evidence, when his own departments, two of them, had issued these extraordinary reports saying precisely the opposite. So this is what we're dealing with right now. The US is so desperate to maintain this level of military enabling to what the International Court of Justice is calling a plausible genocide, that they are willing to lie to their own agencies and to Congress. In this case, it was a lie to Congress. The report was delivered to Congress saying there is no evidence. We have no evidence. We have seen no evidence. They have seen a ton of evidence by their own people, and they are ignoring it.
Phyllis, I have a question for you. I was just curious. When you're talking about how the US is participating in sending weapons over to these countries that are actually not allowing aid to be received, and that being in violation of US law, my question for you is, if it's in violation of the law, is the International Criminal Justice, South Africa, they filed a complaint, right? I just wanted to kind of get your feedback on that. Where
Right.
is that? I know they were supposed to have something decided by the 28th of October, but where are they? Is the US going to get in trouble as well?
Well, very definitely that's a possibility. The South African move at the International Court of Justice has broken a whole bunch of taboos. It's been incredibly important. Just as a side note, which is so important, one of the things it did was to challenge the very notion that institutions like the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, which was created to be part of the United Nations, it was created in order to impose laws on the whole world in the wake of the horrors of World War II and the Holocaust. And in that context, the International Court of Justice is seen as the highest court in the world, the most authoritative court. But it doesn't have an army. It doesn't have a police force. As far as I can tell, it doesn't even have a couple of investigators or a process server to, get its information out. What it does have is more authoritative credibility than any other court in the world. So what the court did was to issue, at the request of the South Africans, a preliminary decision with preliminary measures designed to, and they said these acts that Israel is carrying out, because the South African papers, the South African document that was submitted and argued back in January, was incredibly comprehensive. It was 87 pages of documentation of Israeli actions that constitute genocide. The court did not make a final determination on the facts and how the law applies. They made a preliminary investigation and issued a preliminary ruling with preliminary measures that said whether or not this will constitute genocide eventually, and that will take a much longer time with more, we will have to have witnesses, we'll have to have hearings, etc. Right now, what we're seeing is clearly underway. These actions put the people of Gaza at risk for a genocide. This may be genocidal already, or it may be on the road to genocide. And either way, both Israel as the occupying power and the power that is carrying out these acts has an obligation to stop them right now. And it went on to say, and this was one of the extraordinary things, it went on to say that all of the signatories to the Genocide Convention, which of course includes the United States, have an obligation to do everything in their power to prevent a genocide, and if a genocide happens, to stop it. So instead, what the US is doing is providing the weapons that enable it. So we are directly violating, with our tax money in our name, we are directly violating the terms of the Genocide Convention, which makes us complicit because the convention itself says it's illegal to commit genocide, it's illegal to threaten genocide, and it's illegal to enable or be complicit with genocide. So that's a very specific violation of the ruling of the International Court of Justice. So when South Africa, for the first time as an African country, as a country of the global South, said no longer should these institutions be under the control of the old colonial powers, what it was designed to be, frankly, we are going to take our position there. That was breaking all those taboos. It was an extraordinary moment. And now we're seeing that the ruling that they got from 14 out of 15 of these judges, including the US judge, we should note, was directly focused on the role of the United States. They didn't name the US. They said all countries must not do this. Only the US right now at this scale is providing this kind of support for the genocide.
So what is the October 28th date going to do?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
The October 28th date, what is that supposed to do? Is that supposed to enable a decision that's going to articulate that Israel is engaging in genocide and that?
No, that's not going to be the final decision. I think that's going to be the decision. South Africa, since they issued their initial filing back in January, they have gone back to the court 2 more times with evidence of how the situation in Gaza had actually gotten worse. On one occasion, it was about the escalation to the ground war in Rafah, which Israel had initially said they would not do, and the U.S. had said is a red line, and then somehow the red line was disappeared, and the weapons continued. But it was in response to one of those additional requests by the South Africans that they are preparing for a new ruling. It's not going to be the definitive ruling. That one will unfortunately likely take somewhere between 1 and 2 years of hearings, etc., which is always a problem in how these talks go forward. But there's also, we should note, the potential for a case at the International Criminal Court, which is a different court than the ICJ. And unlike the ICJ's role is to litigate between countries, right? In this case, it's South Africa suing Israel to stop what they're doing to the Palestinians. The International Criminal Court goes after individuals. And the prosecutor of the court, who was under enormous pressure because for a very long time he was refusing to move, he finally did go to the judges of the International Criminal Court and say, I need you to issue warrants for the arrest of Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, and the defense minister, Gallant of Israel, and also identified 3 members of Hamas for their role allegedly in October 7th. 2 of those have now been assassinated by Israel. So it's again this question of extrajudicial assassination that Israel carries out. So far, the judges have not issued those warrants, but there are some indications that that might happen very soon. That would give countries around the world a warrant to hold if Prime Minister Netanyahu arrives in any country which is a member of the court, which we should note does not include the United States in this one. They never said they would support this court. And in fact, we're one of only 7 countries to vote against it when it was created. The countries, if they go to Belgium, if they go to France, if they go to the UK, if they go to any European country, almost every Latin American country, most countries in the world have signed on to the International Criminal Court. They will have a warrant in their hand to arrest and hold any of these men on the grounds that the International Criminal Court has a warrant out for their arrest. It could be an extraordinary shift in the impunity that U.S. support has provided to Israel over all these years.
You see
I
that,
only have about
Santina?
well, absolutely. I mean, I do
They're
know.
coming. They're coming for Haiti. They're coming for Israel. They're coming for
Well,
all of these countries, Santita.
well, I tell you what, I remember my father would say many years ago, more than half a century ago, it's nation time. Lands are changing hands. And that's what we're watching. It's an extraordinary moment to be living through, to watch South Africa from the global South take on a Western power. Essentially, that's not Israel's history, but that is what they've become, right?
Mhm.
Just
That
like
is Israel's history in many, many ways. We should not, in my view, we should
yeah,
not sort of see this as something new and different.
yeah,
This notion of getting the land without a people. There never was a land without a people. There was a people without a land. The Jews that had been displaced and survived the Holocaust were a land without a people. Their land had been Germany, their land had been Poland, their land had been Belarus. They were not given that land. They were given the land that belonged to somebody else.
no,
And
wait, no,
goal was
wait.
we want to make it without people and we'll get rid of the people to do it.
We're not going to take European land. No, 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 we're going to leave them alone. But before we go, um, just help me to understand where we are, because as I mentioned, Hassan Nasrallah, uh, he was, and he is, because he lives for so many people, um, a direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. And I can't help but, even though I got some pushback from some academics yesterday, an academic yesterday, and I understood that. He said, well, everybody says that over there. I said, but you have to respect people's culture. If that's what they're saying, and if that is how he is viewed, that's enough for me. Um, I'm worried, with the extrajudicial assassinations, um, I mean, in the other parts of the world, these are not viewed as wars. These are viewed as slaughters of people who are struggling to be free.
Exactly right. And it's partly how, for many, many years, the propaganda about the idea of Israel, what I grew up with as a young Jewish kid in California, when if you were Jewish, you supported Israel. That was your identity. There was no other option. The great thing is, this is now a generational challenge because the young people that are growing up, young African Americans, young Jews, where it's perhaps the most visible shift,
Mhm.
grown up, especially those that grew to political maturity in the years around 2020, with the protests around the killing of George Floyd, the justice generation. As a friend of mine said, his kids now identify it as the justice generation that they're so proud to be proud of. They grew up with a whole different identity. They
Yes.
weren't seeing being Jewish in the context of supporting this country, occupying somebody else. They
Mhm.
defined their Judaism in the context of being part of a social justice movement,
Mhm.
a whole different world out there. And I think this is what gives us some hope about the change of policy in this country. There's been an extraordinary movement demanding a ceasefire, understanding that a ceasefire means all those other three things. It's not only just stop the bombings right this minute. But what we have to do, it hasn't yet been enough. We have to keep the pressure on. President Biden's going to be president for another 3.5 months, whoever wins the election.
Mhm.
This isn't just about elections. This isn't about Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. This is about right now, about President Joe Biden, who has, in my view, a
Mhm.
mystical view of Israel, precious little Israel that must be defended from the big bad Goliath because it is the precious little David. It is not. It is the strongest military power in the region. It is the only nuclear weapons state in the region. And it is operating with the absolute impunity provided by our military support, our economic support, and our diplomatic protection in the courts and in the United Nations. That cannot be allowed to stand. And the challenge that we've seen over this last year with these incredible mobilizations, the rabbis for ceasefire that have been so incredible in their actions, Jewish Voice for Peace, the young African American organizers who have taken to the streets in defense of Palestinian rights, all of this has changed the dynamics in this country, but not enough yet. The uncommitted movement did more than maybe anything else in changing the language we hear from the White House. They now talk about a ceasefire. That's great. But when they're not acting on it, it's not enough. It's not enough. We need more. We need more pressure. We need the pressure to be escalating. The numbers of people who have resigned from this administration in protest of what this administration is now becoming. President Biden's own legacy. He might have had the legacy of being the one who protected democracy in this country. But right now, if he doesn't change his policy, his legacy is going to be the legacy of supporting genocide. I don't think he wants that legacy, but I don't think he even necessarily knows that's going to be his legacy if he doesn't change it. I don't know if the people around him tell him everything about the power of this movement, the breadth of this movement. 70% of Democrats want the US to stop sending arms to Israel. 61% of all the people in this country want that. You know, they used to be afraid in Washington, oh my God, it's political suicide to criticize Israel. Well, whether that was ever true before, it certainly isn't true now. It's
Well,
certainly true.
Well,
Quite
you know, Reverend ran for president on that, and people thought it was that was suicidal, and he was calling for Israeli security. He
right.
said Israeli security and Palestinian justice are married to each other. You can't have one without the other. That was 40 years ago.
He was right then, and he's right now.
And you were right then, and you are right now. And I have to tell you, well, no, but it's fascinating to watch your evolution because you were born and raised in a certain environment.
Yeah.
And then you evolved. And I think that that is a very human story and something from which we can all learn. Just because you started off in one place doesn't mean end up in another place. We all have to grow, and you have to open up your minds so that you will begin to see the world in a very different way. And that's why I have such enormous respect and love for you, Phyllis Bennis, because and I wish you all the love that this Jewish New Year, which is the new you for everybody,
Rosh Hashanah.
every new year, Rosh Hashanah, and may God bless you. May God bless you. May God bless you and lift you up and keep you lifted, because we're all having a new year today.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Peter. And my love to your dad as well.
Oh, and he sends his love to you, and I have to give him a report, and I'm going to have to share, of course, the video feed. So I can let him know so I can get my respect this morning. How about that?
You do that. You do that.
Because wait a minute, I got her out of bed real early. Not that she wasn't going to be in bed. She said, "For your father, I will do this." I'm like, but to have someone who makes sense in the midst of all of this, because you're not calling for revenge, we're calling for justice.
Absolutely.
Because revenge, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. My father said it leaves everybody blind and toothless. You can't eat, you can't see. You don't want that. So enough. We gotta, at some point, you gotta drop your weapons, everybody. And let's learn to love each other. And eventually, if you love each other, which is a commandment, it's not a suggestion, you'll like each other because you can't help it. So may God bless you, and may God bless my sister, my soror, because we're all that's right. There you go.
Phyllis is like, let me join.
No, we're gonna make her an honorary Delta. Look,
she's like, I'm part of it.
I missed that when I was in college.
That's
okay, Phyllis.
She's Delta. She's the change. We got to work on that.
You are the change.
She is the change. That's the change. And and so I just want to thank you both for being with me this morning, and thank you for spreading the word. Everybody, please go to vote.org. Check your voting status. This is a nonpartisan message for me. I just want you to vote. The American Project does not work without you.
Right.
Go to vote.org. Find out whether even if you registered, you got to find out if you need to re-register. If you do need to re-register, you can do that there. If you need to find out when the window closes, and it closes today in South Carolina. After today, you cannot register to vote in this election. All windows close by the 7th. Unless you have same-day on-site voter registration. Please, please, please go to vote.org and look at Greg Palast's movie, Vigilantes, Inc. Once you see that movie, you will see how important your vote is, your vote and your voice is. Go to saveyourvote.org, saveyourvote.org. Leonardo DiCaprio and Jamie Foxx have made it possible for you to see it for free. How about that?
How about that?
How about that? Phyllis Bennis, sending you so much love. May God bless you in this happy new year. And it's going to be a happy one, because we are coming together for justice, because all those groups that you named, They are in coalition with each other. Red, yellow, black, brown, and white. They all see their preciousness in God's sight and in their own. And we're going to learn from our young people and learn from this new coalition who are establishing justice all over the world, in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Lebanon, in Israel, and in Haiti, and
Haiti.
and in the United States. We can't stop fighting here. I love you,
Okay.
everybody. And I'm
Thank
not
you
here
so
to
much.
go. God
Have a
Thank
bless
great
you.
day.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.